This hangout on air is live. I have 0 viewers, so pick your nose now if you need to get that out of the way. And then I'm going to like basically get rid of all my links so that they don't like ding and
like a real professional over here.
Yeah, actually I turned my air conditioner off in my office and I got rid of a clock that was ticking I could hear in the microphone. No joke.
No AC.
Yeah, no, that's why I wanted you to hurry up because it's going to start getting hot in here. It's not Florida though. I mean, I'm in like Chicago area, so.
Oh, nice. Chicago's sweet. One other
Still there?
Beef sandwich thing there. What's that that famous Chicago beef shack does it? What's that sandwich called? That
an Italian beef? Is that what you're talking about?
What it is? Yeah. Those things are amazing.
Oh, yeah, man. I know. I saw a video when you came last time to the area with
Joey.
He
shot that video.
Mr. Tattoo 1689 guy.
Mr. Cigars. Don't watch movies with him in it. It'll taint you.
Yes. All right. I'm posting this in the pub. Maybe we'll get. And I just heard a ding. All right. I'm probably going to embarrass you a little bit because I did something pretty interesting.
Uh-oh.
You're going to love it.
Okay.
All right. I got rid of that. Get rid of my messenger.
Singing Taylor Swift songs over here.
I was curious if like the job that you got, is it like done now and then now you're doing the film again because it's over? I didn't hear you say anything about that on the podcast, so.
Yeah, I didn't mention it because reasons, I guess. I left on good terms.
Good.
I just wanted to figured if I'm gonna try to do like any kind of, career, if that's even the word, if this is going to be something I want to continue to do, I got to do it now. So, but I love a lot there, and it's a great company. It's called Kingdom Works. They do work helping men in the church find freedom from porn.
I remember you talking about that. So
great ministry.
Yeah. I haven't started recording for the podcast on my end.
Oh, did you want me to record my end?
I do. If you need to take a second to set that up, I'll just let you know when we're going to get into that. But I figured we'd chat for a little bit before we.
Okay. Yeah. Just tell me when to record.
Yeah. So if one thing I was going to tell you, if you do come to the Chicago area again, that my house is open, and also
that's great. Thank you.
Also, I'm sure you're going to get all kinds of requests for this, but I go to Mid-America Reformed Seminary, and there's quite a few scholars there that were not interviewed for the Calvinist movie. And I kept thinking, I'm guessing you're wanting it to be similar in style to Calvinist, but not be like a repeat with just a different topic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that would
actually
be really helpful in that is new faces and, different people to interview.
Got a lot of people. I'm getting so many names thrown. It seems like I'm getting even more names than people were like telling me I needed to interview for Calvinist. So, but they're all like, I think this is such a specific topic, and there's just people who are really good on this subject, but they, everybody's got their favorite guy. So like, I'm getting all these names through but I got talked to Terry Johnson on the phone yesterday. He's a big deal in that world.
Yeah.
Focus on the subject. And, but yeah, so I'm keeping the idea of Calvinist 2 in my back pocket. So I don't want to make, I want this to be a very different movie. Not very different. I guess I'm developing a style, but if I make like a sequel to Calvinist, that'll be like very similar.
Right. It has to be its own thing. So
yeah, this is going to be its own thing. And I have some really, oh man, I hope I can pull it off. Like I have some really interesting ways I want to tell it. And I think it'll be really, really cool.
Sounds good.
If I can pull it off.
Well, I'm going to pull up my recording on this end and hit record. So if you want, I'll give you a countdown if that works for you. And then we'll get right into the podcast.
I can just hit record. I don't know. Okay.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
All right.
Hello. Welcome to a special edition episode of 5 for Fruit. You've heard the warning. This is going to be longer than 5 minutes, but I hope it's an enjoyable podcast because I have a very special person on. I have Mr. Les Lanphere, who can now call himself a filmmaker. Unlike
Yes.
before, now you can call yourself a filmmaker. You got one under your belt.
Yeah, and Marcus said I can't call myself a filmmaker until I make
exactly.
One.
And he is going to be talking to us about his new project, Spirit and Truth. It's on Kickstarter right now. If you guys are listening to this podcast, I will have the link to the Kickstarter there in the show notes so that you can have easy access to it. Les, as I'm looking at it right now, Spirit and Truth, hold on, I'll do a quick refresh just to make sure. It's 89% funded. So almost 90% funded. And you still have 24 days to go. So in one sense, we're talking about a hypothetical film, right? That could possibly be made. But in another sense, in God's good providence, there's a very good likelihood that this is going to get funded, and we're going to be moving forward with this.
Yeah, it's looking that way, which is exciting and terrifying all at the same time. I feel like a little less terrified than the first Kickstarter I did, but yeah, it's very, very exciting, and I'm so grateful to everyone for being so generous.
That's something that I think is helpful, is that you have that one film under your belt. So you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm not going into uncharted territory here now.
Yeah. Although with Calvinist, I felt more confident maybe with the material, like, because I've explained it probably 150,000 times, and worship, I guess I've only explained 100,000 times to like people who visit the church. So my church is regulative, and like all the visitors, everybody's always curious about things, and
right.
And then also I have a podcast, so we talk about things a lot. So.
The Reformed Pubcast.
Yeah, that's the one. You've heard of it?
Yes, I have. In fact, it was one of the first Reformed-ish podcasts that I started listening to. I have a non-Reformed background as well, similar to your story. So I was on the verge when I listened to the episode where Les becomes a Presbyterian.
Awesome.
That one didn't last much longer after that.
Yeah, I was just on a podcast yesterday, and it was with two ladies, actually theology gals, I think.
Yeah.
But one of the ladies said that she listened to that episode right when she was coming around on the subject too, and that's really cool. Really cool that we've been able to impact people.
Well, of course. I mean, God is definitely uses us crooked sticks to do some awesome things, and I just want to in some way thank you for being open to doing some of these things, like just talking over beer, theology, things like that, because this podcast is a result of kind of a new wave of people just starting podcasts because they want to talk about theology. They want to encourage Christian believers, those kinds of things. I personally started my podcast because all my family and all my previous previous experience in Christendom was not Reformed. And I was like, I'd love there to be some sort of resource that people could go to and listen to understand why I've come to where I am now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I thought we would start off with a couple of games to get to know you a little bit better. And talking about the pubcast, this is probably a good segue. I came up with a game called Guess Who Said.
Okay.
And Les, I too know what it is like to have once been not a Calvinist, not Reformed at all, and to have my sermons recorded. And I dread ever having to listen again to anything that I said before, but in God's good grace, he's brought me to a new place. And in some ways, it's kind of like embarrassing, but also just amazing to see where we've come from.
Sure.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I spent a little time scouring through the first few episodes.
Oh no.
Of the pubcast, because I did remember there being an instance in which you and Tanner were making fun of the regular principle of worship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it was rather interesting that in God's grace, you're now making a film kind of arguing for that philosophy of worshiping God the way he has commanded us to worship him.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty amazing in my mind. But as I was trying to find it, I think I remember that you went back and took that part of the episode out because you were responding to somebody who had written in or maybe gave you a voicemail.
He's actually a member in my church now.
Okay.
Joining his church, but he called in with a voicemail and he suggested we talk about the regulative principle. And then Tanner and I both said it was legalism. And, if electric guitar, if that's your gift, how dare you keep someone from worshiping, on the stage with that? And we had all this stuff. And then we got so much pushback from the pub, which was probably like 400 people at the time.
At that time, yeah.
We got so much pushback from Reformed people that were like, you guys can't hate the regulative principle and call yourselves Reformed. And so we studied it just like a little bit over the course of that week. And like, we immediately were like, oh no, like we can't reject this.
Yeah.
And then we started to study it more. And now it's like all we talk about on the show is worship and the Lord's Day and Tanner and his exclusive psalmody.
Yeah, of course, which everyone is confusing with you, apparently.
Yeah.
I need to ask you why you've come to this conviction of exclusive psalmody and why the entire Spirit and Truth movie is going to be arguing for psalm singing only.
Yeah, that was a weird little reaction that I got, which I guess maybe our voices just sound really similar. I don't know.
Not at all.
But people also think, I kind of saw it coming, I guess, but people think that the word worship means music. And so people think the movie, or at the beginning, a lot of people thought the movie was going to be about like what kind of music you should do in worship.
Right.
And so.
Right.
And
that's understandable.
Yeah.
So this game, Guess Who Said? I have a few quotes. Some of them are Tanner quotes and some of them are Les quotes. And you have to tell me which one you think said this. You were Tanner.
What's the episode number span that we're talking about here?
First 5 episodes.
Oh man. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I think some of them will be easier than other ones. Okay.
Okay.
All right. The first one is, I have a confession to make. I used to drink Bud Light.
Oh, well, that's the name of the very first episode. And that's gotta be me.
Yep. That's you. You said that. So you're 1 for 1. All right. This is another one. Driscoll is the one that kind of ushered me into the Reformed camp.
That's Tanner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 for 2. All right. This is another one. You submerge it, man. Baptize the bacon.
Oh man. Oh man. I I showed Tanner, like Tanner used to like, I don't remember how he cooked it, how he cooked his bacon, but I started buying like massive amounts of bacon and cooking them all at once. And so you get this like giant tub. So I showed him how to do it. So we both talked about it.
Yes. Yeah.
So I can't remember which one of us said that quote. I'm going to say me.
No, that was Tanner.
That was Tanner.
All right. And then the last one. It's sort of a Presbyterian position that depicting Christ in general is a breaking of the second commandment.
Wait, say that one more time.
One of you said, it's sort of a Presbyterian position that depicting Christ in general is a breaking of the second commandment.
I'll say me.
Yeah, that was you.
That is sort of a Presbyterian position.
Although is, but
Reformed Baptists are on board with that too, I think.
Right. You should have listened to this part of the podcast episode because it was you guys talking about tattooed Jesus billboard. If you remember that conversation. So you weren't fully on board with it, I think. You're still working through it. And I can tell you were a little reserved about coming down one way or the other on that, because I think you learned your lesson with the whole making fun of the regulative principle of worship thing.
Yeah. And that, we probably introduced the rule into the pub shortly, right around that time. But man, I remember that conversation, and we used to go back and forth between each other's houses because we both lived like a town away from each other. And that was the other weird thing about listening to these early episodes. Just you would be like, let me try that beer. Yeah.
Now you're not even near each other when you record.
But the thing that's like making me so happy is just remembering smoking a hookah together in the same room.
Oh yeah.
The hookah.
And talking about Breaking Bad literally every episode.
Breaking Bad and the hookah. Oh man.
Memories, my friend.
Those
memories.
were the days. We had pretty bad theology, but those were the days.
You were working on it. God's good. God's good. All right, and then this is kind of a classic throwback. I mean, you recently did this again on the Reformed podcast, and I'll have a link to the podcast as well in my episode description for anybody who knows you but maybe doesn't realize that there's a podcast, because there is a podcast. That's always a joke in the pub group, Facebook group. All right, so this is Would You Rather. All right, so because we're talking about the regulative principle of worship, I've got a Would You Rather for you, okay?
You have to explain the rules.
Well, the rules are you have to choose one or the other, and the table is going to be open. You can ask questions, but eventually I'm going to close conversation off, and then you have to choose, okay?
Okay.
I don't know, maybe this will be an easy one for you, but this is my Would You Rather for and it's got a theme of regulative principle of worship, okay?
Okay.
Would you rather go to Hillsong Church for the rest of your life or be stranded on an island with your Bible?
With my Bible. Okay.
Questions.
How far away is Hillsong Church from my house?
Okay, so I'm not thinking, let's just say if there's like a branch of the Hillsong Church in your community. It doesn't have to be like the New York one. It doesn't have to be like the main Australia one.
Are there good churches in my town, or is like all the other churches gone and this is all it's like?
No, there's a really good Reformed church. There's an OPC, there's a PCA, there's really good ones. There's really good options, but you have to go to the Hillsong one.
What's preventing me from going to these better churches?
Your wife.
My what?
This is just figurative. She says that's her church. That's where her parents go, and that she wants to go there. I know your wife would never say this, but
is she unsubmissive now?
Yeah, it's kind of, you guys are working through it. But I mean, for the rest of your life.
So I'm not working through it. She's never coming around on this.
For the rest of your life, man, you know, humbly talk to her about this, but
oh man. So
it's an unresolved issue.
What are like they have like kids church there, I'd assume?
Yeah.
I don't have to put
but you can you can keep your kids in the worship service if you want.
As if that's better.
Yeah, family integrated Hillsong Church.
Oh, that's great. Okay, tell me about this island. How big is the island?
The island it's a decent sized island, and it has plenty of food. You don't have to worry about food. I mean, there's pineapples, there's like wild pigs, and you learn how to farm. You learn how to farm. You learn how to hunt, cook. So you're not going to be worried about surviving.
Is it just me?
Yeah, it's just you.
Just me, but I have my Bible.
But you have your Bible. Yeah. The one that you read on a regular basis, and maybe jot little notes in and stuff like that. So
how did I get there?
You were on a cruise, and
with my wife?
No. Well, yeah, with your wife, but somehow you guys got separated. And you ended up in this accident that happened out on the cruise. You ended up getting separated and then getting stranded on this island through all the chaos. And it's just you. No wife, no kids.
Tough.
It resolves the tension between you and your wife on going to the Hillsong Church.
She's not going to the Hillsong Church. She's not the same wife in this scenario, right?
In that scenario, no. I mean, no.
Like she'll still go to my church. Like
yeah,
the right church.
Yeah, because she gets back home and she goes to the Reformed church that believes in the regulative principle.
And they comfort her with her loss and
talk about God's providence and everything.
But we never see each other again. Is it the rest of my life on the island?
I don't know. I didn't say that. So
okay. Can I be rescued from the island?
There is a slight possibility of rescue.
So there's
questions over.
Oh man. Wow, this is really hard because
all right. You want me to restate the question?
Sure.
Would you rather go to Hillsong Church for the rest of your life or be stranded on an island with your Bible?
I'm going with the island.
I think that's the right answer, man. If you really believe the regulative principle of worship, that's the right answer.
Well, I mean, it's bad because
you're separated from the community of faith and all those kinds of...
Actually, the thing that I'm thinking about the most is my wife.
Right.
Because in one scenario, I'm separated from her, and that's terrible. But she's comforted in a good church and taken care of. But she might try to marry someone else. I don't like all that.
I don't know.
But in the other scenario, she's got a different personality, and she's terrible. Not terrible. I'm sure. Right. I'm sorry. There might be people out there that actually are in that scenario. So I'm sorry. Not terrible. Just
difficult.
Yeah.
Challenging.
I don't want that.
Okay. You know what? I thought this was going to be funny and enjoyable, but it's it kind of went in a depressing direction.
Well, it's good. I don't know.
It's difficult. It is difficult.
That is difficult.
It is really hard for somebody who holds to the regulative principle of worship, because the challenge is, do you want to go somewhere where they dishonor God
or go nowhere
what they call worship, or or not really have worship in the strictest sense?
Can I make bread somehow so I can have communion?
You already answered the question. It's over.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm not okay.
Yeah, you can make bread and wine.
I'm just wondering if I can serve myself communion on this island.
That would be a question that I would, give to somebody that's a little bit more. You didn't ask that one. I figured you would ask that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was just a little introductory fun stuff. I am kind of breaking up my questions about this new project into two different sections. Okay. Ones that are more directed towards you as a person and as the person who's going to be putting this film together, and then ones that are more about the film or the movie, specifically maybe style or whatever, things like that. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'm curious. Maybe you can point to a scripture in specific, or a few scriptures, or maybe even just kind of a hermeneutical principle that convicted you of the regulative principle of worship. I know it's a process, but maybe you could talk through that a little bit.
Well, I started coming to, I was a Calvinist. I was going to a church that was sort of Reformed in name. They didn't really do much Reform stuff in the church. Mm-hmm. Like the preaching wasn't very Calvinistic typically, but I had my kids in kids church and all that stuff there. And right around the time that voicemail came in, actually, my friend Kenny started talking to me, and he was going to this other church and learning about worship and the means of grace and all of that stuff. So I watched this movie called Divided. It's a documentary about family integrated church.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I remember that. I watched it because you shared the link one time, I think.
Yeah, it was really well made, and like Vodi Bakum's in it, and but it was really convicting to me, and so I pulled my kids out of kids church while I was still going to this church, so they were just in the in worship with us. So but I just kept talking to this guy, and I met the pastor. We talked about baptism. Like first conversation was about baptism.
Yeah.
And then I started visiting there in the evenings. And so it was like comparing what, it was like a rock band and smoke machine and like big, huge sanctuary. And then in the evenings I would go, and it was this very simple room, and, preaching of the word was central. And like it was just clear that there was no stress on all the people to keep things up and like to like figure out how to entertain people and like play. I don't know. It didn't feel like a show at all.
Right.
It felt like everyone knew exactly what they were supposed to be doing, and they just did it, and they did it faithfully. So that was sort of attractive to me, and I started to see the simplicity, and then comparing that to the scriptures. And I think the concept that really broke through for me was this concept of faith versus sight. We live, we don't live by sight, but we live by faith. And so it's like, what exactly are we doing when we put on this big show and we're trying to entertain these people, and we have the projector screens? Not that necessarily any of those individual things are bad, but there's just like a philosophy of get people pumped up emotionally, and make sure they feel something, and make sure they're seeing things that are pleasing to the senses and all that stuff.
Right.
And but the scriptures are clearly telling us to trust what we can't see. And then I started to learn about, the means of grace, the ordinary means of grace, as traditionally it's called. And that just essentially means that God has instituted things that he truly imparts grace to people through. And if we believe that, then we don't have to add anything. And actually, if we start adding things in, then we're saying that what God has provided is insufficient. So, it just all became very awesome. It just became awesome. Like I just appreciate the sacraments so much more, and I understand that week by week, sitting under the preaching of the word is in and of itself, it's doing something to me, whether or not I realize it, every day, or see it. It's actually imparting grace to me, and there's actually power in it. And that's the supernatural stuff. So you believe something supernatural is happening. You don't have to see supernatural things happening around you, and you shouldn't be to do that. You just trust what God said. So it is lots of verses like that that say things like that. But like Ananias and Sapphira is also a really powerful story where God wrote entire books of the Old Testament, large books about how he wants to be worshipped. And if you didn't follow those specific things, then he would sometimes kill you.
Like Nadab and Abihu.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like Nadab and Abihu. And so that is, we can't think that now all of a sudden God doesn't care. That doesn't make sense. Maybe things are different. Maybe it's not exactly the same situation that the Jews had, but
if you believe in the covenantal view of Scripture, things are getting clearer, not less clear.
Yes.
More defined, not less defined in some sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've just spent the last few evening services going through the Lord's Days in the Heidelberg Catechism on on the sacraments and on the preaching of the word and on the keys of the kingdom. And man, so much of what you're saying is resonating with me. I think about that scripture that Paul said, where like right now we see as through a mirror dimly, you know, and one day we'll see face to face. And in reality, what we think is kind of like adding to the experience of worship, like the smoke and the lights and the, you know, the projected beautiful images and, you know, all this stuff is actually distracting us from the true you know, reality of one day seeing Christ face to face. You know, I remember, this is horrible, but I remember a time when I was pastoring a church and preaching, and every time I would bring Jesus up, I would put a picture of like Jesus up on the screen, you know. And thinking back on it, I was trying in some way to give an inkling of what that is going to be one day, that face to face, you know. First John says like one day, you know, we'll see him face to face, and that will be when we're transformed. And you can't, nothing can compare to that.
And you're literally saying in that moment, the word of God is insufficient.
It's insufficient. Right.
I need to help God, God, help his people.
That is mind blowing. But that's really helpful to just hear your processing and stuff like that. But like more practically, like what was the most challenging part of the changes that you had to make once you came to that conviction of regulative principle of worship? I mean, no, you said you were going to a different church. I mean, what did that end up being? Something, you know, where you're like, we're gonna have to go somewhere else because.
It wasn't like we have to go somewhere else. It was like I was visiting this church in the evenings, and it just became clear that this is more biblical, and this is more you know, we believe it's more honoring to God what's happening here. And so that was a big transition. We had to leave, and I remember specifically you know, this specific reason was worship. That's what I was saying. Like I couldn't do the rock show anymore. I couldn't. It was just like it was killing me. So that was part of it. I remember.
Just out of curiosity, it was the worship before it was the baptism issue. So
yes, but when I decided I wanted to join, my now pastor went to the session and said, you know, this guy, they all sort of knew me, but Les wants to join the church. He's a Baptist, and he's not interested in, you know, changing his mind on that. And this is very rare, but the session, and I don't know if it's rare for this session. I think my situation is that I actually had kids, and I was going to refuse to baptize them and all this stuff, but they actually said I can't join the church, which was
that's a bit of a.
Well, it was devastating to me, but at the same time, it gave me even more respect for them. It's like, you guys actually take this seriously. And there's arguments that people can make about why you wouldn't want to do that. And I've even told my pastor, if some other family wants to join the church in the future and they're Baptists, and the session decides that, you know, I will not be the least bit offended.
You wouldn't be offended.
God, like I needed that. I needed to be an even bigger reason to start studying this issue more and actually give it a fair shake, and not just be stuck in my traditional view or whatever. So that was kind of off topic, but my wife and I walked into the sending church for the church that I'm at now, and my wife just started crying as soon as the piano started playing and we started singing hymns. Not because it was beautiful, but because it was like boring, not like no guitars, no drums. Like it was just, she's like, this is what we're doing now. Like this is.
She was. Oh man.
She was not happy about it.
She wanted to go to Hillsong Church.
Yeah, exactly. So that's Yeah, there's struggles. There's always
there's practical outworkings of that. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I remember when I became a Calvinist, I realized I should have been talking to my wife about this all along.
Yeah.
Because I dropped it on her like a bomb.
Oh man.
And then I told her I'm probably going to lose my position at the church because of this. And by God's grace, she came around, and even on the baptism issue, I don't know if I probably haven't told you this, but first Reformed church I ever preached in is the Reformed church where my children have been baptized. 3 of them were baptized by our pastor that just stepped down as intern pastor here. And one of them, my most recent child, has been baptized by me. So it's like unbelievable to see what God has done, through all this. But I have been so blessed by this church, which, really holds to that regular principle of worship very strongly. And we're a Christian Reformed church, so that's not necessarily the norm.
Really?
Right.
Nice.
So we're a conservative, confessional Christian Reformed church. We have the law of God read every Sunday morning, just like straight out of Geneva,
Christian Reformed Church, like CRC, like that denomination.
Yes. CRC. Yeah.
Interesting.
We don't ordain women as deacons or elders or pastors at our specific congregation.
But the denomination has opened.
Yes, exactly. So, but man, regular principle of worship, the focus is on congregational singing. The focus is upon a scripture as sufficient. The focus is upon the means of grace as truly that. It's amazing. I can't imagine worshiping any other way now, to be honest with you. How close, how supernatural, like you were talking about. I was tearing up the other day because I was talking through and preaching through and teaching through Heidelberg Catechism's teaching on the Lord's Supper. And I was like, you don't understand. When we have the Lord's Supper, it is like Christ is inviting us up into the throne room and preparing a table before us and sitting down with him and eating with him.
Right. And that is faith.
That's faith. Yeah.
You're by faith entering heaven, not trying to like recreate the setting of heaven here.
Right.
And inviting Jesus to come down and like hang out with you. Like, no, like you're ascending by faith.
Right.
Into the throne room. It's beautiful.
It's amazing. All right. So this is another one, but it's kind of, we're bridging into the topic about film. So what lessons have you learned from making Calvinist, from making your first film?
That is a good question and a really hard one to answer. It's hard to articulate sort of I just feel like I have a general better understanding of like what it's going to take. But yeah, it's kind of all over the place. Cause like I learned, it was just so much fun too. Like, and I feel like I'll be able to hopefully do it faster this time because of all the things I learned, but I had to learn, animation techniques that I had only played around with at, different times in my life, and learned like cinematography. I like became a cinematographer essentially.
Right.
Editing, like all the editing techniques. So it's all like technical stuff. And then, I think the best thing, especially Christian filmmakers, like I feel like, Christian film gets a lot of flack for being cheesy and all that. But
are you a Christian filmmaker or a filmmaker that's a Christian?
I'll say a reformed filmmaker. I'll even go one further.
Oh, boom.
Yeah. So, but it's so weird that Christian film, Christian music, it's all like a ripoff of what the world's doing.
Right.
Except it's not a good ripoff. And I'm like, I feel I'm happy to say that like good art is essentially hiding what you're stealing. And I'm okay with that, even as like my worldview.
Right. There's nothing new under the sun.
Exactly. God is the only creator of original content.
Right.
Everything else is a remix. So I'm okay with taking inspiration from other people. Obviously you don't rip things off, like full, but
like plagiarism.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
But other people are doing it better than me. So look at what they're doing and find the ideas and the things that they're doing, and then start to integrate things that you like, and then you end up with your own style. But Christian filmmakers, for some reason, it's like they watched a movie once that was good, and now they're trying to, like, from memory, like, recreate that instead of going back and, like, studying it and finding out why it was so good and what was impactful about it. So I guess, like, I don't know exactly even what I'm saying. I guess I'm just saying, like, I wish they would rip it off better if they're gonna try to rip things off. And that,
Right.
that's, I'm probably sounding very arrogant and more than I should be, because I'm not saying Calvinist was like amazing or anything, but
it's a pet peeve.
Yeah, it is. And hopefully my filmmaking, hopefully it's something I'll be able to keep doing and get better at, and people will think that I'm doing something impressive at some point.
Right. Well, having been a backer of Calvinists and watching it, I think of that those animated sequences where you kind of took those interviewed moments where they were, the theologians and pastors were explaining the doctrines and gave life to them, were probably some of the, most meaningful parts of the movie to me that I think really clarified. It took what people often consider Reformed theology as this weighty, heady, it's only for the elite, it's only for the smart people, and made it very simple, very explainable, very understandable. My kids watched it and understood. My 10-year-old sons watched it and thought it was cool and understood what it was explaining, which is, I think that's part of it. That's part of, and I'll be interested to see how you take that same principle and apply it to what I would say is even a more complicated philosophical aspect of Reformed theology, which is, the regulative principle of worship. Because, you ever seen that picture of like the iceberg and it's like the 5 points of Calvinism and then like everything underneath is, the rest of Reformed theology? Well, RPW is below the water on the iceberg part. Yep. It's like an outworking of what it means. It's essentially like if you take sola scriptura and you just apply it.
Yes.
Then exactly. then that's what you get. You worship God the way he's commanded us to worship him. You don't worship him however you feel like worshiping him.
You don't invent things. Like it's not okay. God has never said that it's okay to invent things. He always says it's not.
Right. And it's funny if you think about that, because there are probably churches who have kind of taken that modern media mindset of drawing people in and having like an entertainment type worship, who aren't actually continuationists and believe in the future, spiritual gifts, but their worship, the application of their worship says, yeah, we can invent things.
Right.
It's kind of there's a crossover there. I hadn't thought about that, but
I also remember that Mark Driscoll used to preach sermons on the regulative principle because Mars Hill was a regulative church.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he said that he was regulative.
And then he would say, I had a vision and saw things, and those don't go together.
Yeah. I watched a video on his website the other day, and it was he was talking about the atonement, and he said that his view is the Lutheran view of the atonement.
He has that universal element.
Yeah, but he actually like called it that. And I don't think he was doing that before, like saying that he holds to the Lutheran view of the atonement. That's like, I thought you were. Anyways, I don't want to go off of Mark Driscoll.
Yeah, we don't need to do that. What would you have done differently looking back?
Man, even
trying to do moving forward.
Yeah, even some of the probably editing. Well, no, actually, everything. I would have done everything differently.
How about this? I know you guys had a conversation about should you work in your home or get an office space somewhere. I wonder if you thought about that. With this next project.
I'm actually, so for the past, I guess 4 months or so, since I left that job, I've been working from home, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good about the dynamic.
You got a good routine.
Yeah, and I think everybody kind of everybody in the house kind of gets it now. Like daddy's working, and like I'll come down for lunch and I'll come down for breaks and stuff. And
right.
So that's good. But also my church finally has a building.
Oh yeah.
And it's not like used for anything throughout the week. So I'm sure I could, if I need some.
Because your church only worships on the Lord's Day, which is part of the regular principle of worship.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, yeah, Bible studies and stuff are great throughout the week.
Oh yeah, sure.
It'd be great to do that in the building. But yeah, like during the day, if I need to get away, I can just go hang out in the sanctuary or in one of the offices of the church, I'm sure. So
yeah, that'll be good. All right. So these next questions are more specific about the movie. What inspired you to make it? What made you think the next movie I want to make is going to be about worship? For the longest time, I thought I wanted to do a movie about the Trinity. And actually, even when I left this job, I told my boss that I want to keep making more movies. And he asked me what subject, and I said the Trinity. So I've been floating that idea, and it's like this. It's just crazy to think how to make a movie about the Trinity when you believe that you can't use images of the Godhead at all. So like, I still want to make that movie one day maybe, but I don't even know what it looks like. But I feel like no matter what you did, that movie would be really heady, just because there's no way to get around just very complicated uses of language. Yeah. And then just saying mystery. Yeah. Here's what we can say. Here's what we can't say. Yeah. I think it could be good, but that's maybe for another day. But so worship was definitely like second on the list, and even on like whenever Tanner would talk to me about stuff, he would always say I should make a movie about the Lord's Day or about things like that. So right. So it was worship was kind of second place. So the thing that kind of put me over the edge is I sent an email to Kevin DeYoung, asked him if he would be in my movie about the Trinity or some other subject. I'm not sure yet. And he said, well, maybe that sounds interesting. But and then he kind of gave me a list of things that he'd like to see in a movie. And the one that he was the most excited about was a movie about worship. And I'm also really excited about that. So I figured, got this amazing teacher already on board. And it's a subject that I think if I can get people to watch it, it will be a blessing. That's the hard thing, though. It's like it's a subject that people aren't excited about learning about. But well, I mean, 89% funded on Kickstarter, man. You've got people that are already excited about watching it. So, but it's even more than Calvinist, I think this is. You'd like it to be more than an echo chamber. Yes. Of just me. I already believe in the regular principle of worship, and I'm just going to watch this to reaffirm what I already. Yeah, that's the hard thing. Is like the audience I'm aiming for is basically evangelicals that don't think very much about this stuff, so that they can be convinced at least that there's a better way. But then all my critics are going to be, the really, really smart people in the Reformed world that are very traditional and all that stuff. So so I'm hoping going through all the stress of having to please the audience and make all those people happy pays off by that audience actually watching it. Right. So it'll probably be a lot of like, kind of like with Calvinist, it's like people got it because like, oh, this is my story, and then they shared it with their friends. And but Calvinism also just inherently has reactionary. It's just response. Curiosity too. Yeah, like people like they're Google there's a lot of searches for what is Calvinism and stuff like that. I don't know how many people are searching. How should I worship God? Right. I mean, have you ever thought? I know your circles like are the Reformed thinkers and kind of well-known pastors in our circles, but have you thought about maybe reaching out to like that evangelical world and getting the flip side of the opinion? Like, what if you asked, You know, some of those guys, like, what do you think worship is, or how do you think we should worship God? And at least you would be getting those sound bites or something from them, you know, and you could put their name on something. Yeah. That's just a thought.
Yeah, I just don't think those people are gonna want me like filming their worship and then like putting it in a negative light. And
right, yeah, that would be hard,
and it would be uncomfortable for me to do that too. Like, even if they were fine with it, I don't want to. And that's even like the trailer is maybe a little misleading only because I want to get people's attention, and even people who don't even know about this to see and be like, oh yeah, worship's messed up. We got to do something different. But I don't want the movie to be overly critical. That's not the point. I want to teach positively and even experientially. I want people to like see that this is really good. And,
right. I mean, there's
more
a little
than laugh at all the bad
There's
stuff.
a little tiny section in Calvinist about the shallowness of evangelical worship in America, and I didn't think it was untasteful, you know. So maybe something like that.
Yeah, even that Driscoll segment was difficult
to
put together because I'm not trying to be hurtful, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Another question: why did you choose to call it Spirit and Truth?
So there was I think it might have been Terry Johnson book that I was reading early on when I was joining my church. And he talked about sort of the misunderstanding of that idea and how, there's certain churches that think that worshiping in spirit means like laughing and rolling on the floor and being slain in the spirit, and spirit-filled worship is a very misunderstood kind of thing. And I mean, that's the way Jesus inaugurated, sort of introduced the idea of how worship was going to happen in the new covenant, in the New Testament age, was that you'll no longer worship on this mountain or this mountain, but you'll worship in spirit and truth, because the Father is seeking after those who would worship him in spirit and truth. So
that's John 4, right? When he was conversing with the
woman at the well. Yeah. So so I just think there's a lot of misunderstandings about what that means. And maybe people, if they see that it's a movie about worship and it has the word spirit in it, they might, I might get some of those crazy like IHOP type people watching it, and then maybe they'll learn a different perspective.
All right, I'm going to give another piece of advice here. If you've not maybe talked to Danny Hyde at all about maybe having him on the film, you should, because he's a John Owen expert. And I don't know if you know John Owen's interpretation of John 4, but it's very interesting.
Okay.
I can give you a teaser of it.
Okay.
All right. So John Owen is very serious about, it kind of ties into your desire to do a movie about the Trinity. So John Owen is very serious about Trinitarian worship.
Okay.
And so he believes that John 4, when it says the Father is seeking those who will worship in spirit and in truth, is actually a Trinitarian reference. The Father, and then the Spirit, and then who is the truth? Jesus Christ is the truth. So,
wow, that's great.
Boom, drop.
Like it.
And Danny Hyde he would be a good guy to get on the film. He would be able to talk a lot about this kind of thing too. He's written a lot of books about Reformed worship. He's got a small book called What is Reformed Worship that he wrote for people who were joining his church in California out of Catholicism and things like that. So yeah, he's very personable too. So you could definitely chat with him.
Excellent.
About it.
Yeah, I want a good mix of not so well-known people and local churches and stuff like that too.
And he's one of those, I think he's probably one of those that are like not really well known, but not known either. Yeah. He's been on Mortification of Spin recently, and he's done a few Ligonier things and things like that. But nice. Yeah, that would be a good thing. All right. And then maybe this final question: how will this movie be the same and different? than Calvinist?
So there was a lot of, I think I hopefully it will be more complete in the storytelling sort of area. At least what I'm picturing. I have some really good ideas for like the storytelling um, things that I'll be using.
Right.
So, like for example, in Calvinist, I introduced my friend Andrew at the beginning, and
Right.
I had this idea of like we'd revisit him for every topic, and he'd talk on things, and I used him a little bit in the he introduced Piper in the movie, but he's also the guy at the end that gets up in the pulpit and preaches in the Reformed Church, and he breaks the communion bread and all that stuff. So, but I don't think I didn't do it very well. Like I essentially wanted to like follow him, and then you'd be like surprised that he was the one preaching. And I don't even think people even like recognize that it was the same person. And so it's stuff like that. It's like I had these ideas, but I didn't have the skill to pull it off. And I didn't plan it very well either.
Right.
Which is, it's just, stuff you learn. So hopefully it'll be better in that way. It will be the same in, I guess it's coming from the mind of the same person. And I basically do everything on the project except for music. Hopefully I can get Jay again for this film, because the soundtrack, I mean, it's like I didn't deserve such a good soundtrack. It was like it was so great. So yeah, I mean, if you liked Calvinist, then you should like this for the same reasons, that it's like sort of, it's got a certain energy, and it's sort of youthful. That's something I want to kind of because it's, that's unique.
Right.
There's you could watch. I'm sure there's documentaries. I'm sure Ligonier releases stuff about worship, and it's really, I mean, it's great, and it's really high quality, and it's better than anything I'll ever produce, probably in some ways. But I just think, not that our generation doesn't watch that stuff at all, but I just want to sort of communicate in a different way, and really, I guess I am more concerned with the storytelling and artistic medium, and not just the theological aspects and all that.
Right. So, like, would you say your style of film is what happens when the young restless reformed grows up? A little bit.
Maybe. Yeah, I guess maybe.
I'm still cool with John Calvin with sunglasses on, but but the regular principle of worship is right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I did do that, didn't I?
Right. You know what? There's like, I'm really excited to see how you bring a story narrative into the film, because you hear something like this is a movie about worship, and you hear something like, we're going to be kind of defending the philosophy of regular principle of worship. But then you think to yourself, is this just going to be an information download? And if you really do bring like entertainment value and a storyline through it, that's going to, I think, is going to be something very unique and very very good.
It's actually, yeah, it's the part that I'm the most excited about, like the vision in my head of the story itself. I think people will be surprised.
Well, I think that just about wraps up our time, and I want to thank you so much for doing this with me. And I also want to give you an opportunity to let everybody know where they can, get in contact with you, or where they can see any of your previous work or whatever it may be. So drop it now.
Yeah. So I made a movie. It's called Calvinist. If you haven't seen it, you can go to calvinistmovie.com. You can check it out there. You can go to, it's also on iTunes and Amazon. Actually, you know what? It's free on Amazon Prime for this month only.
Are you serious?
For this month only. So
you heard it here, guys. You heard it here.
Yeah, I haven't told anybody that yet. So
free on Amazon Prime for this month.
For this month in promotion of Spirit and Truth. So if you watch it and you like it, and you want to see more stuff like that, please donate something to Spirit and Truth. Throw me a few bucks.
Right. And that link is Kickstarter.com.
It's long. It's
/ projects / Calvinist / Spirit and Truth, a film about worship / description.
Spirit and truth --
oh yeah, that would have taken forever.
Long time.
So just type in Kickstarter Spirit and Truth, and I think it pulls up.
It
or
is
Kickstarter Les Lanphere.
When's this episode dropping?
I'm gonna upload it as soon as I edit it together.
Okay. So it's at 89% right now. Actually, I don't even know if that's true. Yeah, almost very close to 90%. 24 days left. I am pretty confident that it'll get funded, but just so everybody knows, I really want to leave the country and speak to people outside of the country and make this bigger in scope. And that just takes money. So
right.
If you get to the Kickstarter and it's already funded, that
doesn't mean you can't fund it.
Yeah, and you should
fund it because there's those push goals, right?
Yep. There'll be stretch goals, other things down the road. But the first one is especially I want to do interviews outside of the US. And there's t-shirts and there's beer glasses and coffee mugs, and they're pretty sweet. So you get something out of it. And even if you just want to pre-order the movie, basically, so to make sure you see it, if you give $25, you get a digital copy as soon as the movie comes out, and you get your name in the credits. So
right.
You're helping make it, you get to see it, and you get your name in the credits for $25.
And that's a good deal, because I was trying to see if I could collect a special offering here at the church for the $5,000 mark, so that you could interview me and then have a live, presentation of the movie at my church. But I thought that was kind of a little bit conceited. But
do it. I think it's a great idea.
No way, man.
No way.
I can't bring that by the deacons. That wouldn't work. Can this be an approved? Nobody's
collection? Taking me up on that yet, and I totally understand why. And I'm not trying to steal money from churches or anything, but
that would be sweet.
If somebody wants to do it, I think it would be very cool. But anyways, so do that. It up. Yeah. Go give me some money if you want to see the movie, and I really, really appreciate it. And thank you for all your generosity if you have.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Les Lanphere. I got to mess your name up right before the podcast is over.
You nailed it.
Thank you. And we hope that Spirit and Truth goes forward with God's grace, and the film project is to His glory. Well, everyone who's listening, until next time, may you bear much fruit to the glory of God. All right. My podcast recording is done on my side.
Yeah. I forgot that I was recording.
And if you want to just drop that out raw and send it to me through whatever you think is, if it's too long for just send it in the email link, then
yeah, I got it.
Dropbox or something like that.